I just gotta change it. We're good. We're good. We're good. It's not there.
All right, thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, I'll now call the meeting to order. I want to remind everybody this meeting is being live streamed on the internet and also recorded. Please speak directly into the microphone at the podium so that residents watching from home can hear all of your comments. Thank you. Now, we will approve the agenda and consent agenda. I want to note we are adding item 19-3190, which is the purchase of sheriff vehicles. That item is added to the consent agenda. Any other additions?
Yes, and there is the addition of an item. It will be the second special presentation. And it is the campsite wastewater capacity MOU, letter of acknowledgement and concurrence. And I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right. Now we have a couple special presentations, and the first being our NC Association of County Commissioners Conference Youth Voice Delegate, Mr. Riley Pankow. Welcome back.
Good morning. It's nice to see the familiar faces that I got to see last year, and I'm equally excited to meet the new people commissioners that I have the chance to meet this year. Well, for those of y'all that don't know, my name is Riley Pankow, and last year I was given the opportunity to show for Chatham County and the Youth Voices section put on by the North Carolina 4-H community and by the North Carolina County Commissioners. I'm sorry, and I'm really happy to get the chance to show for the county again, and it was so much fun to learn about what it is that y'all county commissioners and government officials do to keep this county running as smoothly as it does. All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate
Thank
your work
you.
there.
Yes, ma'am.
So you're a rising sophomore this year, is that right?
Junior.
Junior.
Yes, ma'am.
Junior, okay. And
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, so we were happy to see you last year. I know this year we're also hosting the Ag Dinner. So,
Oh, yes, ma'am.
yes, Chatham County Agriculture Extension
can't
is
wait.
providing food. So looking forward to seeing you there again.
Yes, ma'am. Can't wait.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I believe we need to get a picture as well.
Okay.
Yes.
We do.
So can y'all, Riley, can you come around back here and we'll have y'all kind of scoot as close together as you can sit?
You need to be in the middle, sir.
You're the tall
Yes.
There it goes.
1, 2, 3. Gonna do one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Glad to see you again.
All right, next item, County Manager Dan LaMontagne, and you will address the amended.
I will
item
first.
as well.
As Commissioner Howard, thank you for adding to the agenda the CAM site wastewater MOU, capacity MOU letter of acknowledgement and concurrence. This is a letter to Mayor John Grimes of Siler City. On behalf of the Chatham County Board of Commissioners, please accept this correspondence as a written acknowledgement and concurrence of the proposed memorandum of understanding hereto attached between the town, Tim Boris, and David Griffin, which will reduce the wastewater allocation to the Chatham Siler City Advanced Manufacturing Site, known as the CAM site. As therein provided, the county understands the necessity for reducing the allocation in order to make wastewater capacity available for other important projects and development within the town's water and wastewater utility service district. As an interested party in the partnership, this MOU is, however, provided only to the extent that a reduced allocation in the MOU does not in any way jeopardize North Carolina megasite certification by the CAM site and does not inhibit or affect in any way the recertification of the same. Chatham County values its partnership with the town of Siler City, and the county appreciates the town's efforts in keeping all.
Well, we kind of approved it on the consent, didn't we?
No, we moved it off.
No.
Oh, okay.
So I move that we approve this letter in acknowledgement of Siler City's agreement.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item.
And now, if I could, I'd like to.
On their Skip the Straw leadership project. And tonight, with the board's support, we will be approving a resolution of support for their project. I'd like to read it. This is a resolution honoring the Silver Award project of 4 Scouts from Chatham Girl Scout Troop number 1006, Skip the Straw. Whereas the Silver Award is the highest award a Girl Scout cadet can earn, and whereas the Silver Award is an opportunity for cadet scouts to show skills such as leadership, organization, determination, and dedication to improve their community, and whereas Cadet Scouts Lily Fowler, Mia Collins, Savannah Matthews, and Revi Godin have dedicated their Silver Award project to one which would reduce plastic from the waste stream by suggesting to local restaurants and citizens that they use alternatives to plastic straws. And whereas thousands of tons of plastic become a part of our waste stream, and there are several environmentally compatible straws such as compostable straws, metal straws, bamboo straws, which would reduce the plastic in our waste. And whereas these scouts have proposed a straw-free day and desire to publicize for their project in our community, and whereas the Chatham County Board of Commissioners supports and encourages all efforts, large and small, that promote and provide for a cleaner planet for future generations. Now, therefore, the Chatham County Board of Commissioners commends Lily Fowler, Mia Collins, Savannah Matthews, and Revi Godin, Cadet Scouts from Bynum Girl Scout Troop Number 1006 for their leadership, environmental ingenuity, and community service for their Silver Award project, Skip the Straw, and we recognize the value of this project for Chatham County and for the environment.
And I make a motion that we adopt.
Okay, now we have a presentation on fair housing by Jack Holtzman, co-director of the Fair Housing Project and legal aid of NC.
Thank you for inviting me here today. So my name is Jack Holtzman. I'm one of the co-directors of the Fair Housing Project of Legal Aid of North Carolina. We're here today pursuant to a HUD grant that allows us to work with local governments to kind of give you continuing education dealing with fair housing obligations and requirements for local governments and governmental staff. All right? So if you will bear with me, I'm going to kind of walk you through a very basic 10, 15 minutes of fair housing, how it deals specifically with local governments and what your obligations are under the Fair Housing Act. So the Fair Housing Act deals with housing discrimination. It has 8 basic protected categories here in North Carolina, ones that you know: race, color, religion, national origin, sex, disability, familial status. But what you may not know is that here in North Carolina, under our state act, there's an additional protected category for affordable housing, so that to the extent that local governments discriminate against affordable housing in any way, the placement of affordable housing, that can become a violation of our State Fair Housing Act. So one of the things that I want to do is just to tell you a little bit about the various requirements. Certainly dealing with the Fair Housing Act, it's not just that you're not supposed to discriminate, but the Fair Housing Act also requires, under its affirmatively furthering fair housing requirement, that local governments do something more, that they not only not discriminate, but that they affirmatively do things to combat discrimination, to end segregation, to address any impediments to fair housing that exist in your county. So for this state protection, it specifically says just that it's unlawful for discriminatory housing practices, discriminatory housing practices to discriminate in, well, I'll just read it here, discriminate in housing and land use decisions in or permitting of development based upon the fact that the development has affordable housing in it. There's not been any state court cases, but there have been 2 fairly costly settlement agreements with other local governments dealing with this specific section of the State Fair Housing Act. And so when dealing with any affordable housing, any tax credit proposals that come before you, this is just one of the things to take into consideration. That act would include not just decisions by the county commissioners, but any of the constituent sections within your county government, your Board of Adjustment, zoning board, any sort of planning board. It's fairly broad in its coverage. So the Fair Housing Act is not just dealing with individuals that seek to rent or seek to purchase housing. It also deals with zoning, and that's where local government conduct can come into place. So in any sort of government action that could restrict zoning or could deal with the placement of, for example, a sober house or a group facility for the disabled. Those specific situations not only involve your normal governmental decisions, but also involve the Fair Housing Act because they include protected groups such as the disabled or other protected groups, other protected categories. Governmental agencies here in the county asking for what's called a reasonable accommodation. The denial of that, even without any intent, could potentially violate the Fair Housing Act. So again, when dealing with zoning issues, reasonable accommodation concept of a change in a neutrally applied policy, that definitely can involve fair housing protections, so that you might need to make an exception to zoning rules that are normally applied in order to afford persons with disabilities an equal opportunity to enjoy their housing. Examples would be allowing a nursing home to operate in a mixed residential zone, or waiving minimum side yard requirements, variance to allow facility for people with disabilities in a commercial industrial district, allowing an 8-person home versus a 6-person home, an exception to dispersion requirements that you may have trying to place group homes. Those are all potential reasonable accommodations that you could be asked to provide. So the AFFH, the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Obligation, it's not just something that applies to HUD, but it applies to all recipients and subrecipients of HUD grants, whether it is CDBG monies, whether it is home monies, any involvement that you might have with HUD funds coming in, whether, again, as a direct recipient or a subrecipient through the Department of Commerce, can implicate the AFFH requirements, and you should just carry out, obviously, your duties under the assumption that fair housing applies and that all of your conduct, needs to be in accord with the Fair Housing Act, something obviously that you do already. In trying to address this, in trying to do something to affirmatively further fair housing, there are 3 things that you can do. You can do community education, you can do enforcement work, you can do fair housing testing. Your own analysis of impediments document that was issued in January of 2019 stated that one of the problems that existed was that residents here in Chatham County were not filing fair housing complaints, and that as one possible reason for that was that people didn't understand what their fair housing rights were, or who they could go to, or what they could do if they experienced fair housing, or they experienced housing discrimination. So you've done a great first step in appointing a fair housing officer, but there needs to be more fair housing education that you have here in the county specifically, dealing with affected groups, both in Spanish and in English. You need to allow for enforcement work to occur, and if that's going to happen, people need to understand what their rights are and who they can go to in order to effectuate their rights. So we look forward to working with county staff to conduct community education, to distribute fair housing materials, and to help you in your achieve your goal of affirmatively furthering fair housing by doing that along with your staff and community groups here in the county. Thank you very much.
I do have a question. So
Yeah,
you
please.
said that there was no complaints filed by Chatham County.
Or very few that were filed in Chatham County
In
by
Chatham.
Chatham County residents.
And you think part of that was because that we didn't have a good outreach or a program that was helping people understand what they could do and the complaint they could make?
Well, one never knows the exact reasons, but certainly the fact that fair housing complaints were not filed is certainly not an indication that there's no no housing discrimination that's in existence here in the county, just like throughout North Carolina and the United States, housing discrimination exists. And so certainly your staff and the people who created this analysis of impediments document that the county created noted that as one of the possible reasons for the fact that there were no complaints filed, that people did not know their rights and that they did not know who to go to if they wanted to vindicate their rights.
I see.
Yeah, so certainly I think that more education is always better, both for housing providers as well as tenants.
So I have a question about
Yes.
including the FHA prohibiting a range of activities, including restrictive zoning. So when we're looking at areas where zoning, the result of our zoning is that you have one house per whatever acreage it may be, could that be construed as restrictive since it doesn't really allow for density? Or is the fact that we do allow for density in some places a counterbalance?
Well, you can have housing based upon density and the examples that you talked about. The question is there some impact upon a protected group? And certainly when you're talking about group homes
Right.
or Oxford houses, sober housing, in that context, when you're dealing with a protected category, then the Fair Housing Act would come into play. So normal zoning conduct that the county may do, that's part of normal zoning. That's part of
Right.
whatever the county can do. But if it impacts upon one of the protected groups specifically, that's when it becomes a potential fair housing issue.
Okay.
I don't know did that answer your question?
So regardless of whether that's the intent or not?
Well, so if there was a disproportionate impact upon one of the protected groups, even without intent, one of the ways to prove a fair housing violation is by something called disparate impact. You can have intentional discrimination, you can have disparate impact, or you could have the denial of a request for a reasonable accommodation. All of those things could result or could be evidence of a fair housing violation.
Okay.
But it's very fact-specific.
Right. Okay. I was just wondering whether it would be possible to unintentionally create a circumstance where you are, as a matter of fact, discriminating, whether that was your intention or not. And it sounds like
You could have a disproportionate negative impact upon a protected group, but that wouldn't be the end of the analysis. What's called disparate impact analysis is a several-step analysis before there would be any determination of a violation.
Okay. Thank you.
I did have one. I believe several years ago, care homes were before this board, and it was, I'm not sure if that's covered under one of your categories. Jason,
Did
care
you say
homes?
a care home?
Yeah, I think that's what they were called. And I'm not sure if there were certain restrictions in terms of how close they could be together.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure if that comes under this also.
Well, if the care home was for persons with disabilities, whether mental or physical, or recovering alcoholics or recovering substance abusers, former substance abusers, that they are considered disabled under the law, then it could potentially impact.
I see. I think these
fair
were,
housing.
these were elderly individuals that needed nursing care.
Mhm.
That was the type of facility. So I'm not sure if that's part of this also.
Well, Chatham County, to my knowledge, does not have an additional protected category based upon age discrimination. Orange County does. But obviously, as we all age, I can only speak for myself, as we all age, disabilities become more. So certainly there would be a large potential overlap between elderly or, depending upon how senior these folks were and disabilities. And so it could be, it could involve a fair housing issue.
Well, that might be something then we have a Unified Development Ordinance project before our county. It will be in process for a number of years. But, and since this information you are bringing in is fairly new to this county, that may be an opportunity for planning and our housing, affordable housing facilitator to look at in case there are other group kind of facilities that may come up and be under these particular rules. So I would just like to encourage staff to at least take a look at where these intersect. And I really appreciate it. How long have you been on this job?
Since 2011.
Okay.
And I just want to add, maybe the educational component that you mentioned early on is something that our Affordable Housing Advisory Committee could help us take on.
So we have started the outreach. We did one back in October, and this is part of the continuation of that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so affordable housing is very important, and obviously Chatham County, like all of North Carolina, needs more affordable housing. But where you place it is also a very important issue and could be a fair housing issue. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's now time for public input, and I guess I'll let's see how many folks we've got signed up and for what and how we want to handle
We
that.
have 29 signed up to speak on the monument, and no one signed up for any other public input.
All righty.
Did you sign up for a public hearing or public input?
Yes,
Right,
29
yes,
people have signed
right.
up.
Yes, that's a public hearing. That's a separate agenda item.
No.
Oh, and he said no.
So, folks, do we want to wait then and have public input at the discussion around the monument and let these public hearings proceed?
Yes.
Is everyone okay with that?
Okay.
All right, we'll do that then.
Mike, you want to make sure there is no one for public input that.
On the zoning, there is, right?
Yeah, just anyone for public input on an item other than the monument or one of the public hearings.
Are there
Is there
people signed
anyone?
up on the public hearings?
Yes, yes, there are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so
All
let's
right,
proceed
so we're-
carrying on.
The first item is a legislative public hearing. These are the county-initiated rezonings of 14 businesses in the formerly unzoned portion of Chatham County, and Mr. Hunter Glenn to present.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to use the microphone this time. I'm going to give a brief overview of the 13 business rezonings and kind of go over what the current use is and if there is any proposed change to that property. And I'll also give a brief overview of the process up until this point.
Oh, and can you lift the mic so
Lift
we
it up a
can
little
hear
bit
you?
closer.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. All right, so just for some background, in August 2016, the county commissioners extended zoning to 388 square miles of the county, and the zoning that was given to the part of the county that had not been zoned was R1 and R5, which are residential uses. Planning staff contacted the businesses in the R1 and R5 classifications to offer them rezoning. In early 2018, the commissioners approved 49 rezonings, and then an additional 12 were approved in late 2018. And these 13 properties are the third and final effort to rezone non-conforming businesses in the county.
So I just want to clarify. So our agenda says 14? Is
It
this?
does. Yeah.
Okay.
So we are 13 now. We had somebody withdraw.
Okay.
So there was a 5-acre parcel on Chatham Church Road that was going to be for a dog kennel, and the owner's name is Glenn Dunlap, and he withdrew his application after we had the initial meeting about it. So
All right, got it. Thank you.
it is now, going forward, it'll say 13.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'm just going to go through each parcel that we're going to discuss, starting with parcel 65032. It's located at 1660 Ed Clapp Road in Siler City. The current zoning classification is R5. It is currently used as a diesel repair and body shop. The proposed rezoning is for heavy industrial. According to the owner, they don't plan on making a change to the business. And it's a 1-acre parcel, and the entire parcel is proposed for the rezoning. And if you do have questions, just stop me as I go. Parcel 3416, 750 Jerry Fry Road in Bennett. This parcel is zoned R1 currently. It's used, but it's hard. And then there's a square that's towards the back. That's a half-acre, which is a cemetery, is not included in the rezoning. So, but everything else that you see in blue would be for neighborhood business.
So
And
both
it's
sides of the road.
on both sides of the road, yes. And this is the current, it's the current footprint of the business right now that we've discussed with the owner. And we have some where there is a non-conforming use, but he's come in and discussed that that's the areas that he uses for the business or would use in the future for his farm venue. Okay, moving on. Parcel 14836 is at 180 Rufus Brewer Road in Siler City. The current zoning classification is R1. It's used as a carpet business for both sales and installation. The proposed rezoning is for neighborhood business. According to the owner, it's going to remain the same use, not going to change. And the L-shaped outline is 1 acre, and that is where the business is currently used, and it's 1 acre out of 28. Parcel 3111 is at 55 West Raleigh Street in Bennett, North Carolina. The current zoning classification for this property is R1. It's a mechanic's garage. The proposed rezoning will be for neighborhood business. There aren't really any immediate plans to change the business. It doesn't look like it's in operation currently, and the entire lot is 1/10 of an acre to be rezoned. Also in Bennett, we've got parcel 3242, which is at 3814 Chatham Street. This is R1. It's a flower shop, and the proposed rezoning is for neighborhood business. There are no immediate plans to change the use. It's 0.12 acres, and the entire acres would be rezoned. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
You were anticipating my question. There are other properties that are adjacent on my map,
Yes.
and
Yeah, I'm going to that. Technically, yeah, here we go.
Are these different ownership?
No, they're both the same owner. I split them up because
Oh,
just to.
Different uses.
different parcels?
Yep. And so the current zoning, this is for parcel 3243, which is actually, they are connected, but they're not the same building. It's a little confusing. When you go to Bennett, the left side, which is the Morning Glory Cafe, or one of the cafes there, that's a different owner. So it's the right side of that business is actually is included with the other one that's the flower shop, which is separated by a parking lot. So 3828 Chatham Street in Bennett. This is the current zoning is R1, and it's vacant retail space. Might have been a restaurant in the past. There doesn't look to be the proposed rezoning is neighborhood business. According to the owner, there's no immediate plans to change it, and it's the entire 0.37 acres. And then we've got one more in Bennett, parcel 3238. It's located at 3895 Chatham Street. The current zoning is R1. It's a garage, and the proposed rezoning is for neighborhood business. The owner doesn't have any plans to expand or change the business, and the entire 0.85 acre parcel is included. I only have like 40 or 50 more slides, so it shouldn't be. Okay, parcel
We got all night on that.
60305 is at 94 Bonley Bennett Road in Siler City. This is for, it's currently zoned R1. It is a lumber yard. It's not a sawmill. It stores lumber there. The proposed rezoning is for light industrial. According to the owner, they're going to keep it there. It's that use. It's Daniel Brothers Logging Company. And the entire parcel, 15.27 acres, is included in the proposed rezoning. And then the last one here is parcel 4794 at 82 Bonley Bennett Road. This is currently R1. It is a restaurant and has a apartment upstairs. And there also is going to be an expansion of the current use, some type of new restaurant possibly, store space, retail space. There will remain the apartment above. The proposed rezoning is for neighborhood business, and it's for the entire 1.44 acres. So that's the end of that. If you have any questions.
Oh, go back to that last
Yep.
slide.
Mhm.
What are the roads it's on? I know
It's
it
on
says
Bonley
Bonley
Bennett
Bennett.
Road, and then that's old 421. So it's
Okay.
right there in town. It's where the old train station
Right.
was.
So it's
That's
across from
been-
the fire station.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's the railroad tracks.
Maybe.
And so that one is, wants to be neighborhood business, but
And
the
the one-
lumber yard right north of it wants to be
Light industrial.
light industrial.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
No.
All right, do we have anyone?
I think there
Someone
might
to
have been
speak.
some applicants that also wanted to speak. Do you know, Hunter?
I haven't received any confirmation from anyone. They were just going to be here to answer questions.
Okay,
If the commission or if there was any comments that they might want to respond to.
okay. So I think the best thing to do for this, because there was some confusion with our online submission process,
Yeah.
is just to ask who wants to speak on this item.
Okay,
Let them come up.
you heard the woman. Is there anyone who would like to speak on any of these 13 rezonings? Come on down.
We'll do body surfing.
Thank you. My name is David Prophet. My wife and I purchased our farm 32 years ago. We live on Whitesmith Road, which is about 650 feet from the three parcels on Henderson-Tanyard Road. That was the 73009, 10670, and 78275.
Was this the wedding venue site? Is that
The
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 one?
Het-
Wedding venue site.
Hetlandis
Yes,
event site, yeah.
right. Our main reasons for choosing to live here include peace and quiet, low motor traffic, and low light pollution. the essential elements for our peace of mind. We like our neighbors and are in support of Chris Vervoort's use of the property since his arrival, which was special events, weddings, subdued, low-key celebrations. Many of our other neighbors are shining examples of the farming economies that we were attracted to, including Harold Rogers. We have relied on them to help us develop our hay fields, timber stands, and vegetable gardens. You gotta remember, we've been there 32 years, and this is why we're there. We have reviewed the zoning request to change the 3 lots from the current grandfathered use status to neighborhood business. To better understand the request, we reviewed the list of businesses that would be allowed under this designation, either now or potentially in the future. It includes ABC stores, breeding kennels, gym and fitness facility, lawn store, dry cleaners, drug stores, and service stations. Measurably from our current residential farming atmosphere. We all support the property owner's current business model as a wedding and event venue, but the zoning request introduces too many possible future uses that we do not want so close to our residences and farms. We currently go to Siler City and Pittsburgh when we need a strip shopping center. We come home to have quiet and peace of mind. The grandfathered status should remain as is. The proposed rezoning of these 3 parcels should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have your comments?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
All right, discussion? Any questions for Hunter or?
Let me add one more thing. There's a number of neighbors that may not get a chance to raise their hands.
Sure.
We just want to say that we're in agreement with the statement.
Okay. Thank you.
No, I think we may just want to refer this to the planning board. I mean,
Okay.
This one item, is that what?
No,
All
Or
all
all
of
of
them would
them?
go to the planning board.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you all. Then we'll close the hearing and let the planning board take these items up. Next is a quasi-judicial public hearing. This is a request by Andrea Snyder for a conditional use permit revision to add multiple uses permitted in B1, located on parcel number 82736, 587 Old Farrington Road, Williams Township. And being as this is a quasi-judicial hearing, we need to get folks sworn in. So the next item on the agenda is a public hearing for a conditional use permit. Please note the board is required to act in a quasi-judicial capacity as it receives evidence and makes a decision. This means that the applicant is entitled to a full evidentiary hearing. During this hearing, the board will receive legally acceptable evidence to establish sufficient facts to apply the ordinance. Anyone who intends to testify on a quasi-judicial matter must be sworn in, including staff. All individuals who will be speaking in this public hearing, please stand to be sworn in.
This is you, Jason.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence or testimony you are about to provide is factual and truthful to the best of your knowledge? Thank you, sir. And Mr. Sullivan, you will not be timed. So you have sufficient time to submit your evidence.
I have 13 slide PowerPoint that I'll be.
Come on,
Give me
man.
just a second. I want to pull up the GIS system so we can get oriented.
Don't use Bing. Site plan, site plan.
So good evening, Commissioners. Again, this is a conditional use permit revision. So this particular property has been zoned conditional use B1 for a number of years. This actually predates the process that we currently have. So none of you may be familiar with the old process we used to have, which was a parallel conditional use district rezoning and then conditional use permit. So it was a somewhat confusing process, and we now have the conditional district rezoning, which combines those two processes. But we still have these legacy conditional use B1 districts with conditional use permits. So in this particular situation, the conditional use permit was issued for a hair salon. It has been used that way for a number of years, and now the owner's desire is to sell the property and to make it more to make it more appealing, they would like to increase the number of uses that are currently allowed through the conditional use permit. So what I will pull up on the screen, these are the proposed uses that Ms. Snyder would like to add to the conditional use permit. So these are all uses that are currently allowed in the B1 zoning district. So it's not the entire list of permitted uses, but a smaller subset. But it is more, there are more uses than are currently allowed, which is that one single use. There are no proposed changes to the site plan. So because this is a conditional use permit, there was a site plan that had to be submitted and approved with the application, and there are no proposed changes to that. So the only revision to this permit would be the addition of these uses. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. And I'm not sure if anyone has signed up for this public hearing.
So you said out of the list of possibilities, those were the ones she chose to help her market her property.
That's correct.
And it only applies to a corner of her property?
No, it would apply to the entire property.
That is conditional B1?
The conditional use B1 property, and there's that overlying conditional use permit.
Oh, okay. So she does not, a different owner of the next one down, the hatch marks?
Right. Yeah, so there are two other properties that are to the south of this that are zoned for conditional use neighborhood business, I believe.
Okay.
So this would only apply to what is shown as like a light green color.
And she did not want conditional use neighborhood business?
No, that was, at the time that she applied, I don't know that, conditional use neighborhood business wouldn't have been an option. At that time, B1 was the only business district that we had as an option for rezoning.
I see.
Jason, can you identify the cross street that it's
Sure.
more or less at a corner at for
Is that
me?
Whippoorwill?
Yeah, Whippoorwill and Old
Yeah.
Farrington Road.
Okay, that helps me.
And the list of business uses that she's looking at now would they be covered by neighborhood business?
I'd have to go back and look at the ordinance to do a comparison of, one to the other, but those are typically uses that you would find in neighborhood business. But again, because this is a conditional use permitting process, the plan and the uses are all tied to the approval. So if the additional uses are approved, then that becomes part of the permit, but nobody could expand beyond that. And again, there could be no expansion or change to the site plan unless it came back to the board for a revision like we're doing tonight.
And I'm assuming the adjacent residences there? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you'll need to be sworn in, but, yeah, the residences, they're behind it, they've all been made aware of this, or?
So I think the notification would have gone just to the Property Owners Association because we mail to adjoining properties. So I don't know that it would have included the property owners within the neighborhood, but we did post a sign as well, so there would have been a public hearing sign at that corner.
Yeah, I guess I mean the folks specifically that would back up to that.
It's the Property Owners Association right there.
Yeah,
Okay.
easement,
Right.
Right.
or buffer rather.
Mm-hmm.
So
But there are
in full
residences that back
disclosure,
up to
yeah,
that.
I live.
There are residences that back up to that
Right.
property.
And so I just want to know, is this list speculative? Is this, is it intended to just make the property more desirable for a purchaser, or is there something that suggests that businesses are, is there an intention to have businesses on that strip? I mean, it's a very residential area, so I'm just
Yeah, I mean, I think
interested in.
with our, if we were to approve that, then any of those potentially
Be there.
buy that
Right.
and locate there.
But only on this one tract.
Right.
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 And I guess that was what I was getting at with the, even with a sign on that property. If I live behind there, I might not even make a
I didn't
connection.
see it.
And there,
Yes, I will say,
Okay.
in full disclosure,
Yeah.
I live there and I did not see a sign. I
Okay.
only know from our agenda.
Okay.
But that does not mean that people were paying more attention. Did not see it.
We'll swear her in. She wants to speak, I believe.
Yeah, would you like to speak this time? Sure. Let me have you stand and, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence or testimony you're about to provide is factual and truthful to the best of your knowledge? Thank you.
So I am Andrea Snyder, and I do own the property that we're speaking about.
Can you
Currently,
move the microphone closer to you? Thank you.
currently the property is C1, CUB1 use for hair salon. I got it rezoned 12 years ago. It is currently under contract for one of the uses as an accounting office. And all of the potential uses, which I put the application in prior to the contract, were under the B1 usage. So all, approved, or potentially approved under that. The neighbor to the right is Bud Matthews' business. Next to Bud Matthews' business is also a commercial property. I don't know if it's CUB1, but it's something that has to do with keeping heavy equipment there, and it's more of an industrial type use. So, that's, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Okay.
But
Any
I do know that
questions?
the beauty salon, or the hair salon, has been, it's light use. It's not a lot of
Yes,
traffic in and out. I'm
yes.
just wondering whether some of these might be more heavily, trafficked.
Some of them may be. I thought, here's my chance. I need to
Yeah.
put as many on as possible.
Right.
But really, the reality is I do have a very serious buyer who is an accounting firm.
Right.
And so office, business, professional, governmental, is what I'm looking at. And then some are also a little lower usage, but that was my intent when I put that many on.
Okay.
And how big is the site? I'm sorry.
The site is 1.137 acres, and the house itself is about 1,320 square feet.
Yeah, I would think, some of those more intensive uses, like a medical office or something, probably the site itself would be kind of prohibitive to do a lot.
Because of parking and
Yeah.
impervious,
Yeah.
restrictions on impervious, so it'll always be a small
Yeah.
business opportunity.
So Jason, I do have a question about that. So if we were to move forward with this list, what would be the process if someone else were to come along and want to open a medical clinic, inpatient, outpatient, whatever? Would there then be an opportunity to put in some limiting factors, or is it just whatever can fit on that footprint?
Yeah, whatever can fit on that footprint. To be honest with you, some of these uses probably wouldn't fit too well. Lawn and garden shops might be a stretch, or what you think of as a medical clinic might not be on the same scale. So it might be one doctor in that structure versus having a clinic where you've got 5 or 6 doctors. So I think scale will be very different because just the limiting factor of the property. And we have the built-upon area limits, which is another limiting factor of any further expansion, even if they came back to the board, is going to limit uses on that property. Other considerations, a public hearing, the board has a discretion. You don't have to approve the full list, so that's something that if there are some uses that are concerning, those can be struck from the list. As long as Ms. Snyder's okay with that, then.
Yes, I wanted to add that that's what I was
So-
told as well, that it's
Yep.
not all or nothing.
Yeah.
That's
so-
right.
Okay, and no one else had signed up to speak,
No.
correct?
And there's no decision needed tonight, so once the hearing's closed, it's forwarded to the planning board for
Right.
their review.
Okay,
Then that's what we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks.
Next item is a request by Nick Robinson on behalf of Old North State Water Company for a waiver to allow a utility easement within the perimeter buffer between Briar Chapel SD East Commercial Area and Farrington Village. Mr. Sullivan again.
All right. So this is a request for a waiver from the Compact Communities Ordinance provisions that apply to Briar Chapel. I'll start out by just a general overview. So the image that is on the screen, this is the overall footprint of Briar Chapel. The area that we'll be discussing tonight is, I don't know if you can see me moving this hand, let me get the pointer. So we'll be looking, oh, is everybody okay looking at this? Or you- Okay.
Watch out.
Point back this way. So we'll be
Look out.
looking, this area right here.
Yeah.
So that's the area that's designated SD East, and it's immediately adjacent to 15501 North, and on the east side is Farrington Village. So the specific request is for a waiver from the perimeter buffer that applies, and viewshed buffers are a minimum of 100 feet. In this particular area, the buffer is 300 feet wide, so the easement to bisect that 300-foot buffer. So what you see on the screen is a zoomed-in image of the property, and the area that's got the cross-hatching is the area that would be the 30-foot wide crossing, and it's in a Z pattern. The reason it is in that pattern is to better preserve the viewshed between Farrington Village and SD East, as well as 15501. The reason this request is before you, Old North State owns and operates the wastewater treatment system in Farrington Village. And as my understanding, Old North State and EnviroLink are one and the same. EnviroLink operates the wastewater system in Briar Chapel. So one thing to note on SD East, there's a pump station. This is located right here. So that pump station will force wastewater to the plant that serves Briar Chapel, which is in the central part of that community. The idea is that the Farrington Village wastewater plant would actually come offline. It's an older facility, is my understanding, and needs to be upgraded. What this would allow is for the wastewater to be pumped from the existing Farrington Village plant to this pump station in SD East, and then that would then pump the wastewater to the Briar Chapel facility. There would also be a return line for the treated wastewater. So currently, Briar
think several years.
Testing, testing.
Water quality purposes, correct, yes.
Do you have a lot, much 9-volt? Sorry, I got 2 more. We should be good.
Correct, we'll get, utilize both of those 9-point permits and the point permit, and then Briar Chapel has and Carrington. So we can be very efficient in our operations. We're still committed to reclaiming irrigation. That's the right way to go. We've got a commitment there. Briar Chapel and all the landscaping, everything. So we're working through those details. But yes, we can utilize both of those types of districts. Was the Briar Chapel system kind of built with this expectation? I mean, just surprised, I guess, that that capacity is there. Right. Well, it was overbuilt and such from that. We actually, with all of the green building focus that Briar Chapel had, I've been surprised myself personally with the amount of usage there was at Briar Chapel. I live out there. I think the initial permit was for about 250 gallons a day. I got 2 kids. We do dishes and laundry every day. We're probably using 120 gallons. So there's, I think, part of that engineering, combining the systems and having the capacity maintained and managed by one entity is quite more efficient. In the end, it provides for better benefits with better treated product systems.
I have a question too. We saw the zigzag that we're going to do. Do you have buy-in and support from the actual landowners that are involved that are going to be providing those easements?
Yes.
As I understand it.
Engineering and with the different homeowners around there, and we, as I think Jason said, we got an easement from Mr. Parrish to run through his property.
So no one's objecting in terms of the neighbors.
Right.
It was just one landowner?
Correct.
So are you following is that a road right there?
It's a Creekwood, is that road in Carrington, or I guess this is Trundle. I'm trying to use my cursor there. I think Trundle comes through the Briar Chapel buffer. It's a very small road, but the majority of the road is Creekwood, and those are DOT roads, so we'll have to get an easement, or an encroachment agreement, I should say. And all that has not been done yet. We're going through this process right now first before doing that.
So you haven't put line in yet?
Correct. Just so from the Briar Chapel commercial area back to the plant, all that infrastructure is in now. This section is the final leg of that.
And the diameter of the 2 pipes are?
I think one is 12 and one is 8, 12 and 8.
And I would be remiss if I know this is related to your utility easement, but we've been receiving, I represent Briar Chapel as part of my district, and I've been receiving quite a number of emails about sewerage, I suppose you would say, spills and smells, especially around some of the trails and pathways. And I know it's related to moving sewer up to the treatment
Sure. Yes, ma'am. There's been about 3 or 4 of those breaks in that line in the past few months, and we're dedicated to taking care of that, getting it resolved. It's called a pressure wave that's going on right now, and we've been able to figure out here just in the past day or so that it is as a result of the cycling off of the pump. We thought initially when the pump kicks on, the pressure that it takes to pump up the hill, so to speak, that was causing the break. But in doing some more isolation testing, we've just determined it's kind of the reverse of that. So we've got engineers on the case right now to get it resolved once and for all.
They'll be happy about that.
Definitely.
Can you indicate on this map, because I visualize it better with the trees in the road, where
Yeah.
the pump station is going to be located?
Yeah.
Cursor working?
Whatever we can cursor.
Yeah, it's very similar. Okay, right, that makes sense. It's where the newer,
Get the attorney help.
newer path is being established. Thank you.
Nick,
Well, I know, my name is Nick Robinson, Bradshaw Robinson Slaughter, Pittsburgh, on 28 Hillsborough Street. And though I'm sometimes given to speaking at length, based on the presentation that Jason did, where he stole a lot of my best material, and then all the great questions that you've asked, there's really not that much more left to say. We're basically here requesting a waiver. A waiver is conflict, is something that you can do under.
This would require a conditional use permit for assembly occupancies in residential zoning districts and consider waiving conditional use permit application fees for those uses as recommended by the planning board.
The final planning item for tonight. So I'll give you a brief history of how we arrived at this item tonight. You may recall in November of 2018, there was a citizen-initiated text amendment to the zoning ordinance to require a conditional use permit for churches and other places of worship. We went through that entire process and it ended up being denied due to legal issues with federal laws. At the same time, this was being discussed, the planning board did request a much broader evaluation of assembly occupancies that are currently allowed by right in residential zoning districts. So you as the board of commissioners directed the staff to work with the planning board in evaluating whether there were any issues with assembly occupancies in a broader sense and whether there were any options to address them now or in the future. So there was research that was pulled together by James Phelps in our office that was presented to the planning board. And the planning board in April of this year discussed different options to look at assembly occupancies ranging from leave it as it is to requiring a conditional use permit or looking at performance standards that could be applied to those uses that are permitted by right. As they discussed this, as the planning board discussed this, they expressed concern that it would take considerable time to develop the standards and that work on the unified development ordinance was going to be underway soon, which is now underway, and that we could work with a consultant in developing performance standards over the course of 3 or 4 years. So what ended up happening is the planning board, by a vote of 9-2, recommended implementing a conditional use permitting process for the assembly occupancies that you see listed on the screen as an interim step when we work on the unified development ordinance. So there were multiple parts to this motion. One was the recommendation that you see on the screen, which is requiring the conditional use permit. The second was waiving the application fee for conditional use permits specifically for these uses. And the third was to allow the consultant to work on this and evaluate it as part of the unified development ordinance process. So this is the item that's before you tonight. There was a public hearing held on this in June this year. There were no comments received from the public. And then the planning board continued their discussions as was required by the zoning ordinance in July of this year, again leading to the recommendation tonight for conditional use permitting process, the possibility of waiving the fees, and then the consultant working on this as part of the unified development ordinance. There was a second item that was also accompanied this, that was regarding section 8.8 item exceptions. That is not part of the item tonight. The planning board took an additional meeting to review that, so we'll be reviewing that item at your next meeting. So tonight you're just looking at whether or not to change the requirement, to change the permitted, what is currently permitted by right in residential districts to a conditional use permitting process. So So the planning board by a vote of 8 to 2 on this particular item, when it came back to them, recommended adoption of a resolution approving a consistency statement, which was included in the notes. So that's one action that you would need to take if you're inclined to vote for this tonight. And then the second would be an ordinance actually adopting the amendment. And then you would also need to discuss whether or not to waive the conditional use permit application fee for these uses. So I have discussed that with the county attorney, so he may have some additional thoughts on that piece of it. As far as voting on this tonight, if you're inclined to vote for or against the text amendment, you can certainly do that tonight. If you want to continue discussions on whether or not to waive the fee, you don't have to make a decision on that tonight. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to try to answer them. And there are plenty of board members here as well if you have questions for them.
So could you briefly summarize, it's hard to read all of that, what the list of facilities are, besides, of course, churches and other places of worship and nature center? So these were all changed to conditional use now.
That is the recommendation, right? So if you're reviewing all of the uses that we have in the table of permitted uses, which if you looked in the zoning ordinance, we're probably 10 or 15 pages of just use after use. So we went through as staff and looked at all of the uses that are allowed by right in residential districts, and then looked at those that were assembly occupancies. That's the issue that is under discussion, and that's what came up in November of 2018. So you may recall we had a place of worship that opened on a residential structure off of a private easement, and also issues with neighbors. The neighbors submitted the text amendment to change this to a conditional use permitting process, but because of the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, there are protections for churches that are specific to say that you can't treat a church or a place of worship different than other similar type uses. So that's why we're through and looking at all of the assembly occupancies that are allowed in residential districts, and this is what that list is composed of. So you'll see grounds and facilities for hunting clubs, grounds and facilities for nonprofits, public parks, which would be county park facilities, and then schools, both public and private, in addition to churches and other places of worship, and then daycare centers in the principal residence to accommodate government intention. And there are other uses that require a conditional use permit currently in residential districts, so that we already have those in place, but we didn't include those in the list because we didn't want to further confuse this item.
So every one of these types of facilities would now require a conditional use permit.
And again, with the idea being that we would, with the consultant for the Unified Development Ordinance, we would further review these to see if there are performance standards that could be developed to address the impacts of these uses in residential neighborhoods. That then, in the future, it's possible that this could switch back to permitted by right with those additional performance standards. This is in residential districts only. So one thing to note with churches and other places of worship, it's allowed by right currently in a number of other all-in-one business and O&I districts, and there's no change to that, so they would continue to be allowed by right.
And this, again, was because the development of the Unified Development Ordinance is going to take a few years. It's a lengthy undertaking. And as I understand, the planning board's thought process was to have something in place during that interim, so that we might be able to avoid another church coming in off of a private road, because with a conditional use permit, you can actually talk about it. But permitted by right, created a hardship in the community. So I'm not sure if it's a tail wagging the dog here, but it certainly is something that I know the planning board spent several sessions trying to.
They had difficulty, and it is even when we were on the staff side, looking at researching this topic and looking nationwide, there's no consistency where we can say, let's point to a standard that's been applied uniformly to places in the facility. There's not. And that's why I think it's difficult for the planning board to say, well, what are the critical issues that we think need to be addressed, and then two, what can we do to effectively address them if anything? schools, the Candy School Road, we're going to have 4 schools, but public and private, within less than a mile of each other. And that's been all been approved administratively. So there may be some reasons you want to look at, you want to have a stopgap in the process to at least bring the public to the table to have a conversation about whether or not these uses are appropriate in residential zone areas.
And I think it's a good point too, that the catalyst method, the place of worship, the fact is, this is to deal with all assembly uses in residential. Can you hold up the consistency? Should we wish to, we would need to adopt.
So there'd be, if you're planning to vote for this, there's two actions taken. One is adopting the resolution with the consistency statement that's on the screen, or any other consistency statement you think would be appropriate. And then the second action will be voting to actually amend the ordinance to adopt the changes that will are attachments.
I think that there's probably not downside to a conditional use permit, because whenever you're talking about assembly, you're talking about traffic. And I think that was certainly one of the major issues involved with the church that was permitted by right. And I think the conditional use permit allows neighbors and allows community to have input. So I would be in favor of the conditional use permit, knowing full well that in a few years we may have a solution to the unified development ordinance.
As an interim solution.
So I would make motions, just to keep it moving, that we adopt the consistency statement as proposed.
Adopt the resolution and, like we can adopt the resolution and.
You have to
First,
do it
first.
Yeah, the consistency statement first, and I'll state it. The proposed amendments are consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, Plan Chatham, under the land use plan element, land use policy 5, strategy 5.1, which reads, encourage context-sensitive development design. This type of design includes elements such as architectural features that resemble historic structures and local vernacular site design that reduces impacts on historical structures, working landscapes, and view sheds on public roadways, integrated open space and preservation of unique natural features such as foliage, trees, and mature forests.
Second. Just curious, is that really the most relevant? It seems odd.
So this is something that a lot of jurisdictions encounter when you're working on text amendments, trying to find language in your adopted plans that specifically address something. So this was the closest thing that would met the intent of the actual.
Context sensitive. Motion's been made Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, sir.
So I don't know if you want to discuss the fee waiver tonight or end that discussion next meeting.
I say, let's talk about it for a bit and see what we don't know.
I like that approach. And you said this is something Jeff had looked into?
He has discussed it with Jeff. One, I don't know if you're interested in this.
Yeah, and again, I noticed the discussion in the planning board, and correct me if I'm mischaracterized, but there was again, a consideration of, a conditional use permit requires a fee, and there was a consideration of some of these small country churches that might be developing, might have a difficulty with the fee. And that's brought up this conversation at the planning board and with the planning department. And again, this is not existing facilities. This is new only. And but does it also apply if they're doing? This is important. If a church is building a fellowship hall extension, would that come under a conditional use permit if they are building on the same property?
If it's on the same property that is grandfathered, just like we've been dealing with the businesses that were unsold. As long as it's on the same property and they can expand and meet all the other department's requirements, then we handle those administratively. And there's a clause in the zoning ordinance that covers that. Now, if a church or a place of worship were to purchase additional land and then add it to their property, that grandfathering is not extended to new property, only to the property that's in existence or that was associated with the church at the time zoning was in place.
Are we talking about church-only exemption?
Yeah, I'm not sure
And I
that's.
think so the planning board recommendation was all of the uses that were listed that changed tonight will be eligible for that fee waiver.
I mean, just like you could single out place of worship for the place itself, I don't see how you could single it out for a fee waiver.
Is that correct, Jeff?
Schools, hunting, fishing clubs, daycare centers above 50, they get those options.
And then the uses that currently are prior to this action tonight that require a conditional use permit, they would not be eligible for that. That's something to keep in mind.
Just this.
Yeah, the planning board recommendation was just to this list.
Okay.
And then this is, so the fee that applies for a conditional use permit is a $500 flat fee plus $25 per acre. As far as the number of, I'm trying to think of the number of applications that say we receive in a year, for churches, places of worship, maybe one every 1 to 2 years. Daycare centers, maybe 1 to 2 a year, or one every 1 to 2 years. The grounds facilities for nonprofits and hunting clubs are one every 10 years. Parks, public parks, you have a good handle on those, one every 10 years. Schools, we've had more, some more frequently, so maybe we've had 1 or 2 in the past 2 years. Those are about a third of the sewer.
So probably schools would be the highest number in terms of the next couple of years, because we know there could be another school or two in the next few years. But some of those are all
got a conditional use in red on the screen, we would just not charge the application fee for the conditional use permit.
In a residential.
In a residential, right, in a residential setting, that's right.
Yeah, and you're right, and you pay a fee. I mean, you know, and I think that's what it boils down to for me. I mean, I guess I would not support waiving the fee because we aren't asking existing folks to, you know, comply with some new
So
crazy big government.
I just want to confirm it does have a fee, because that's what.
So if they're in a, like a business zone?
Yeah.
So the only uses on this screen that are allowed outside residential are churches and places of worship. And then grounds and facilities for nonprofit clubs right here, that where it says P, they're only allowed in O&I. Where all these blank spaces are located, these uses just aren't allowed at all in any of the other zoning districts. So churches or places of worship that open up or want to open in any of the business districts, they just pay our administrative fee, $250 flat fee. That's right. They're just working internally with staff and the appeals commission.
They're already there.
And
Yeah.
wait, I'm sorry. The schools are not permitted in commercial?
I think,
Because
I'd have to get my table of uses. So schools and residential areas require 3 acre minimum lot size and double setbacks. So we may have another classification for schools in business districts where we wouldn't have that provision, and that would just be the administrative review.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my concern is that in effect, by waiving the fee, you're creating some incentive for encouraging folks to locate in a residential district, which I think is somewhat in conflict.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I sort of struggle with the waiver of the fee. And it, to me, it was a real outlier in terms of how many times it would be used or requested. But on the other hand, I know there are small churches that, the small church that, wants to open up in Chatham County. And I think that would be, I think the conditional use helps solve the problem of a neighborhood. You know, it gives the neighbors the opportunity.